Morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tassos Iossiphides. I'm a partner and head of the Financial Consultant Service for Greece and Southeastern Europe for Ernst & Young. Let me thank, first of all, the Hellenic American Chamber of Commerce for the invitation in the framework of the 33rd GES. This session is dedicated in a discussion on the ever-topical subject on Greek economy, the challenges that is faced by the SMEs. So challenges that are exacerbated currently due to the energy crisis and the very pressing inflation trends, and how they can be faced through access to financial instruments. The discussion will be effective with two very important ladies who are dedicated in entrepreneurship, and we have the honor to host Madam Sophia Kounenaki-Efraimoglou, President of the biggest chamber of Greece, the Athens Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Madam Athina Chatzipetrou, who is the CEO of the Hellenic Development Bank. Before addressing my queries to the two ladies, I would like to set the scene for the SMEs in Greece. They cover 99.9% of the overall companies, some 700,000 companies in Greece. The vast majority, of course, they are obviously the spine cord of the European economy. 77.2% have less than 10 employees, very small, that employ 40% of the workforce in Greece, and contribute to 19.6% of the Greek GDP. The majority of SMEs, due to this very small size, cannot attain economies of scale that might make them competitive, and they are also pestered by low productivity, only 35% productivity vis-à-vis the average of the European Union, and only 2.5% of the overall of these companies are exporting. And beyond the intrinsic ailments, the Greek SMEs are faced with a series of new challenges. Originally, it was COVID-19. This caused scarcity of the cash flow, disruption in the supply chain, and to the extent that we must change consumer needs and the production paradigm. And there came the energy crisis with the accompanying inflation pressure, which also have a negative impact on their competitiveness. And therefore, labor cost, operation cost, and lending cost is ever increasing. In cooperation with other organizations, we have conducted various studies in Ernst & Young that prove how important is the issue of scaling up the size, that is, of SMEs, in order for them to become competitive and be able to respond to the external difficult circumstances. In order to attain, however, that, they must first pursue their transformation, both business and operational one, and also trace an applicable strategy for the transition to a better model. This transformation, however, has cost and calls for important investment. So in order for the companies to support their companies, they cannot afford it themselves. There is a difficulty in tapping resources, and this is one of the most important impediments. I must indicate, on the basis of their requests and also studying, we know that the most important impediments in funding is the issue of bankability. The large number of SMEs are still in the red, or they're under restructuring. The second opportunity regime in comparison to other countries is not that beneficial. And we also see an ignorance. They do not know what are the options they have beyond the conventional banking lending. Therefore, by viewing the very strong inflation trends and the ascending interest rates, they should know that there are other options such as subsidies, be it direct through the European Commission with various programs, Horizon, Life, Accelerator, and so forth, or through national options through European funds again, such as the NRSF, Program Special of the RRF. In the category of loans, there are also low interest or guaranteed loans from the Greek Development Bank, granted either from the Greek Development Bank or the RRF. And finally, there are also other options that can boost the own assets, such as from the Greek Development Investment Bank, Festos Fund, and other Greek private equities. So let me invite to the tribune, on stage, Madam Chatzipetrou, who is the CEO of the Hellenic Development Bank. The Hellenic Development Bank has had, especially over the last 2-3 years, has evolved into an institution of facilitating SMEs and entrepreneurship, especially with regard to access to funding. I've listened to you on many occasions saying that there is a strategic orientation and commandment on broadening the bankable companies. What could you say on that? Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation of the Hellenic American Chamber of Commerce. This is an excellent panel that follows an extremely interesting panel which talked about invisible banking. So for us, in this subject, the trend of banking in our country and worldwide, it's something that will be of concern. I paid heed to what was said vis-à-vis the ecosystem of SMEs. It is true that SMEs are hundreds of thousands, 700, 800,000, depending on what we consider valid in this definition of what constitutes a small company. So that what we know from the banking system is that only 40,000 out of them are really bankable. This is a major and important element. And the subject, which is our conference, that is challenge, we view it as an opportunity to broaden the size of bankable companies in a way that uses technology, and especially the new banking as a service through the use of platforms and the use of data so as to do the first screening. So in the Hellenic Development Bank, we committed in February of 2022, committed to the Prime Minister that we prefer a platform of the kind of Know Your Customer that will facilitate the one-stop shop of companies vis-à-vis the customers, the products, that can touch upon and have us as a catalyst and a leverage vis-à-vis their access to funding. This platform will be on air in January. We expect that in the way I will be explaining to you to do a first health check of companies, of SMEs. We will set the 3 on-off criteria, that is their compliance with the tax revenue service, with the social security service and TRCS, and therefore all the banks will be seeing that. We already have this capacity, but it is strenuous and perhaps very difficult for them big companies do so. They do this so-called shop-in-shop for specific loans, as it is with the RRF. Small companies have neither the know-how or the capacity to visit many branches in seek of funding, especially the remote ones, those that are active in the region. So with this product, we will create a visibility. They will have the possibility to view, to have the business plan seen, that a tentative bankable, because it has gone to this company, we will be able to see whether they can receive a proposal from some of these contractual banks. Why are we interested in these tools? We are interested because it offers the possibility to have access to funding, to make it a right, even of very small companies. And the second, equally important, is in order to have, as a leverage of policy making, to be able to collect data that will come back to the political leadership so as to draft policies which in due course will facilitate this access to funding. Therefore, the goal is, yes, to help the existing companies grow, but also view the new ones. We have a pledge made to young startups to offer the same possibilities of visibility. And that's why I consider that invisible banking has offered us a very important stage, because the cooperation through such kind of instruments goes across the value chain. So we see only a win-win effect. We connect the requests of businessmen with the capacity and pledge of the state agency to offer low interest rate loans, guaranteed loans, and at the same time with the capacity of banks to broaden themselves this part of their entrepreneurship. Because we hear and we know that the banks shrink their retail. So what was the possibility in a big village for the new businessman to get to know the appropriate banking partners so as to make a request? So this is our pledge. And the first goal set is to double these 40,000 bankable companies up to 80,000 as a system, the overall system that is. Thank you. That's the most important initiative. I would like to welcome Madam Efraimoglou, the President of the Athens Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Given that we know that most of the members of the Chamber are SMEs, what does the Chamber do and what does it plan so as to support SMEs in the new environment of the challenges faced? Good morning. You're absolutely right. The Chamber may have all the SAs and the export companies as members, but when it's got 120,000 companies, definitely the vast majority are the SMEs. So Athens Chamber of Commerce and Industry, being the established interlocutor of the Greek state, has a broad spectrum of services offered, from consultancy with credibility and documentation, covering information on development laws, program for support of companies, legislation, both Greek and European Union, public contracts and so on, and all the issues touching upon tax, legal and labor issues. And let me say here that this consultancy is offered not only physically with a visit of businessmen here in Chamber, but also through real-time chat, and can be even extended to very specialized consultancies, such as for the creation of business plans. We organize training on sustainable development, which is most important in our days. We inform on public tenders. Let me mention that in 2020 we had created an e-platform which is still operating, dedicated in loans, where companies would enroll and mention what's the problem in their funding, and in cooperation with the Ministry of Development, we try to find solutions. Another main axis is the extrovert character of the companies. We are those who organize hosting and missions abroad, but also hosting companies from other countries and representations, and creating B2B meetings. This is very important for companies, especially for SMEs. I must also mention that I was greatly impressed by the fact that last week in such an event with Albania, which is a neighboring country, nevertheless, 90 trade agreements were concluded here in our chamber. Of course, we also have the export guide, and we have cooperations, as it happens with the Hellenic Development Bank, and organize one-day conferences for our members' information, but also with the Greek company of export credits, who also offer an immediate funding to the exporters. Let me also mention that quite important is our nursery, where the chamber is the first chamber in Europe that created such a nursery for start-uppers. We also have accelerators and the network of business angels. It is a joy that on Friday in Elevate Greece, the best startup of the country awarded was Digiset, which is in our nursery. We were together on Web Summit in Lisbon, so we do everything for small innovative companies while also trying to help all of them. Of course, we also make interventions in our institutional capacity to the state in order to solve problems mentioned and referred by SMEs. We have the service for alternative litigation service. There is such a center in our industry of mediation and arbitration. It's very important because it incurs lower cost for SMEs in case of litigation. And let me mention what we are to do in the future. We have prepared a platform, since we said that SMEs must enter a digital environment. So the chamber could not be absent from this effort, offering that is digital services. The web portal of spatial analysis is a GIS tool that we offer, which helps entrepreneurial initiative. In other words, by viewing economic and demographic data, someone who would like to open a bookstore, for instance, can identify where there is a school, what is the population distribution, whether there are other bookstores already established nearby, and this is fundamental for the spatial distribution of companies. We are all also ready to launch a platform that does a matching between companies and unemployed persons so as to easily locate workforce, which is a problem in our days. And since I've heard something about metaverse in the previous panel, we could not be absent from such an endeavor. We will be organizing training and one-day conferences in cooperation with the General Secretariat Foresight, which is under the Prime Minister's Cabinet, and we will be presenting an ecosystem of Greek companies in people and cybersecurity in the immediate future. Furthermore, we will be training our workforce in all digital tools. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Efraimoglou, for all that you described, that the chamber does. I'd like to give the floor again to Madam Chatzipetrou. We lag behind, but it is important to mention, I realize that this is gradually in transformation of the development bank. So what is the day after, as things currently are? What are other ways of strengthening entrepreneurship? Well, during the pandemic, that is in 2020, when we started, we transformed the challenge into an opportunity. We started with an agency of 280 million euros in its budget, and currently we have 8.5 million euros of loans that have been dispersed. I have the great joy to inform you that we don't have an ATL yet, which means that we still maintain, the Greek entrepreneurship is still in force. Following the 10-year crisis, it has become resilient. That is, companies that manage to survive are very fit, and we try to give them the way to grow further. So through the Hellenic Development Bank, who have prepared the capacity. As I explained, you have the possibility to move from 280 million euros to 8.5 billion, which is through a digital transformation. We have risk monitoring, and you have helped us in that. We have the whole data mining, as mentioned by the previous speakers, which is necessary in order to have policy making and in order to be able to assist and complement the banking system by leveraging and offering tools which the banking system has a strategy to absorb. We are the part, a link of a chain. We help the banks to help businessmen to become successful. It is true, Greek companies, very small Greek companies, have intrinsic problems such as their size, but the same applies in the future as well. We've been told in KSW that 80 to 85% of the German economy consists of small companies up to 10 persons, so we're not alone. But these companies, the German companies, is precisely what Madam Efraimoglou has said. They are extrovert. They work in clusters. They work as part of a seamless value chain. This is what we have to view, how we will be able to help and train companies to view funding as the sector, banking that is funding, as the basic resource for tapping funds and not create working capital through tax evasion or other classic Greek inventions, which were justly applied, I must admit, in the past. So we must be next to them with well-targeted products. We have already 9 new products launched in 2022, targeted either on sustainability agenda or on the part mentioned by you before, that is the growth. And we go in complementarity to help them in RRF that has a specific position or have a lower positioning, of course, and thus we complement also the part of grants, both of grants and banking loans. Let me say something at the end, which is a catchword. In the Greek Hellenic Bank, we say that the Hellenic Development Bank, we say that we fund those who are daring and innovating. A last question. Thank you. just some more time. To Madam Efraimoglou question, what do you believe that SMEs should do beyond the issue of funding so as to survive in the new environment? Well, it's true that SMEs have historically been the motto of Greek economy and still are. And I acknowledge in many cases in Greece, we have unfortunately the mentality that a businessman wants to be a boss of himself. Unfortunately, this kind of model cannot take us very long, cannot take us far. And therefore, the survival of an SME constitutes the great wager. Adopting the law on mergers and additional transformations this May is a very opportune intervention of the state towards the sustainability of SMEs, because the new institutional framework encourages cooperations, which is a practice not really embedded in the tradition and the ecosystem of Greek entrepreneurship, and offers both tax incentives and tax deductions. And thus, companies can strengthen their substance, reducing at the same time cost. And of course, these corporate transformations facilitate access to the RRF, which is an extremely important financial instrument. It has been reiterated ad nauseum today. And thus, SMEs can be facilitated. I would say that company transformations shape the conditions for sustainability of SMEs, leaving behind the hurdles of the past and the rigidities of the past, and radically transforming the landscape. The secret to all that is attaining economies of scale. This makes a difference. The size, that is, makes a difference. Thank you. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this session, because the issue of SMEs is of paramount importance. Thank you. And I thank both the ladies that have enlightened us today on the specific subject. Thank you.